All right, so today we're going to talk. Oh, that's going to be super loud. Today we're going to talk about planes of the head. All right, so we talked about facial proportions already. Now we're going to start talking about the head as a three-dimensional object, right? So if we want things to look three-dimensional, we have to start thinking about how to shade them. So we have to start thinking about where the light and shadow are going to fall on the head specifically. So we're going to start off today by kind of sketching in the simple basic shapes, and we're going to get more and more detailed as we go. So we're going to start by drawing a circle. We want to draw that up near the top of the paper here. So we can just kind of sketch that lightly. That way it doesn't necessarily have to be perfect. We can kind of block it in. So we've got two parts to the head. We've got this sort of bone sphere shape, basically, that holds your brain meat, right? And then we've got the front of the face, right, which holds your sensory organs. It orients your nose and your eyes and your ears so that you can observe the world around you, right? So I want to start now and come down this way, and I'm going to kind of define my central axis. So in this view, we've got what we'd call a 3/4 view, which means they're kind of looking to the side. They're not looking directly ahead or directly to the side, but they're looking slightly to the side, partially to the side. So I want to kind of divide that central axis, define that central axis. Now I want to define my eye line, so I'm going to go down 1/3, or I'm going to go up 1/3 of the way from the bottom of the circle. I'm going to put that in right across. So that's going to be our eye level. All right. I kind of want to bring that center line a little further back. Okay. So now I'm going to figure out where the chin is. So to do that, I'm going to measure the distance from the center here to the top of the head. And I'm going to drop that down to here. I'm going to put that chin in right there. Do I like that third? Something like that. Or I like that better. So we really want to kind of measure and check things all the time as we're working. It's really easy to make corrections earlier on. It gets more and more difficult as we go. All right. So now I'm going to define a couple of these. I'm going to define the rest of the sort of face surface here. So I want to go back to where the circle starts to curve back up, about here, maybe halfway between the bottom and the side here. I'm going to bring my jawline down. So the jawline's going to kind of go at an angle here, at an angle here, and then to the chin. So we basically have three little angles on each side. And I want to try to get similarity over here, but I'm seeing kind of the profile of the face a little bit more, so it's going to be a little different. All right. All right, so here's my basic kind of head shape. So we're going to start with a really basic shape, and we're going to slowly make it more and more complex as our idea. So I think I want you to think about this as if you were sculpting this out of clay. All right? So if we were sculpting this out of clay, the first thing we do is we try to get the right amount of clay into our hands. Think about how big we want it to be. We try to get that much clay. The second thing we do is start to shape that clay into the rough shapes we're looking for. So that's kind of the phase we're in now. So I'm going to shade the side of the head here. And again, we're starting off really rough and slowly refining it, so you don't have to worry about being terribly accurate right now. Just thinking about if this were a lump of clay, I had light shining down from up here, where would the light be hitting, and what would be in shadow? Something like that. So now I want to think about this space underneath the brow, because that's going to be facing away from the light. It's going to have some shadow on it. So I'm going to rough that in. So this is kind of the brow line up here, right along this line. And this is where that goes in a little bit. Your eyes are going to sit inside of here. So this goes in a little bit, and that's to put some bone out in front of your eyes to help protect them, right? Now I'm going to figure out the basic nose shape. So from here to here, I want them to go about halfway down. So the nose comes out a little bit, starts in closer here, and then comes out a little bit. So I want the angle to come a little bit off that center line. I want this to kind of get wider as it comes down. And then the bottom of that nose structure is going to be like this. All right, so here's our basic starting structure. All right, so now let's go ahead and check some of our proportions, right? So here's what we're looking for. We want this eye line to be halfway down the face. So we'll check that. That's about right. We have this maybe taking up around half that space. So the face portion taking up around half of that space. We have the nose plane here, starting up inside of this kind of brow shadow and coming down to about halfway between this eye level here and the chin. We have a sort of trapezoid shadow shape underneath. And then we have this bar of shadow over here. Okay? So the next thing we're going to look for is the mouth. We're going to try to figure out how to place the mouth on here. So the mouth we want to be about halfway between here and here, the bottom of the nose and the chin. So I'm going to say that's about right here. And we kind of want the bottom lip to be resting on that. So I'm going to kind of structure the line of the mouth, put that right here. So the side of the mouth that's on the left side, since the head is turned, everything that's on this side over here, the head's left side, the right side from where we're looking, is going to be a little bit smaller than it's going to be on this side, because this is a little bit closer here. Okay, so we'll make that mouth a little bit smaller on that side. We'll make the eye, when we get to it, a little bit smaller. So breaking the mouth down into simple structures, you can really simplify this actually. I don't need to get as complex as I'm getting. So we basically are going to have the top lip mostly facing down, and the bottom lip mostly facing up with a little bit of cast shadow underneath. Now, lips are usually kind of shiny because they are often kind of wet. So they're going to have highlights on them. We're going to erase out highlights when we draw people usually. But this is kind of where the main shadow patterns are going to be. All right? So the eyes are a little bit tricky because this one, again, is going to be bigger than this one. So we want to kind of take up about half the space between here and here, but the half needs to be in the middle. So take a break from the sketching for a minute. I'm going to draw something to show you, but I don't necessarily want you to draw it because I think it'll make your drawing look weird. So if we think about the structure of the eye, right, it's spherical like a ping pong ball, right? So the eye is round. It doesn't look that way from outside because we have a lot of skin and bone protecting it, right? So the shape of it's actually kind of like this. So if we shade that the way we would shade a sphere, we have like a gradient with it transitioning from dark on this side here to light right here, where the light's hitting it. Something like that. All right, so that's kind of the way the shadow is going to lay on it. But again, we're not going to see all of that. It's going to be covered by an eyelid up here. And then that eyelid up atop is going to fold into the brow just a little bit higher up than the bottom of the lid, right? And that's because you've got like a bony ridge over it that's kind of protecting it and holding it in place. Same idea on the bottom. Come here, here's the bottom eyelid, and then kind of have some bone covering up this portion of the eyeball. Again, holding it in, make sure it doesn't pop out, and also protecting it. So our eyes are going to look something like that, but they're going to retain sort of the shading that we had with our spear. Okay? All right. So generally speaking, the rule of thumb is we kind of want some highlight on the top eyelid and some shadow on the bottom. All right, so that's kind of a good way to go about shading it. If you want to get really fancy, you might thicken up the edge here of the top eyelid, because that's usually going to be in shadow. And the eyelids have a little bit of thickness to them, right? They're not totally two-dimensional. They have a little bit of thickness. And you might, if you want to get fancy, pull in some thickness on the bottom eyelid just by running another line as close as you can to the first one. You might even erase some of that out because that's going to be catching a lot of light usually. So you'll see this a lot in Renaissance paintings, and it really kind of serves to illustrate the detail that they would sort of go into. So same idea over here. This one's going to be overlapped a little bit by the nose from where we're seeing it. Try to make it symmetrical and just a little bit smaller. Dark, light. I'm going to pull out some highlight on this upper eyelid and add a little shadow down below. Okay, you can add nostrils in if you want. You don't necessarily need them, either way. Again, trying to keep this fairly simple. This is sort of a geometric abstraction of a face, broken down and simplified a little bit, just to show you where these planes are. On a real face, we're going to have like a lot more subtle changes, a lot more gradations. Okay? So from here, I'm going to head over this way, and I'm going to add the ear. So remember, the ear starts at about the eye level. So if I kind of follow this eye level over to here, I can start my ear right here. And the line where it attaches is going to be right where my jaw comes into the head, right? It's right at the top of the jawline. It's going to come up here, come down. It's going to attach at nose level. So the bottom's going to be about here. So there's our ear. Keep it fairly simple. Like that line a little bit better. A little more. All right, so, and then we want to add maybe a neck. So our neck's going to attach like right close to where our ear is attached. This neck kind of looks like this. Okay. A lot of us tend to draw our necks way too thin, but kind of attaches close to your ear width, really. Like it doesn't get much skinnier than the distance between your ears. And over here we have a cast shadow from the head. Something like that. And then so I've probably done a lot of smearing of my drawing, so I might want to go in and clean it up. A good trick for cleaning up your drawings is you can kind of put your hand on a piece of scrap paper, and that'll help prevent things from moving around too much. And I can just kind of refine my drawing. I can fix things that I don't think are accurate, and I can clean it up. And again, I can't overemphasize how important it is to look at and revise your drawings and try to fix them. I think spotting things you did wrong after you draw them is the first step to being able to spot things that you're doing wrong as you're drawing them. And once you can do it as you're drawing them, you're going to do it a lot less. But I think it's important to do it after you draw them first in order to train that skill. Really bring out those highlighty areas. All right, so there we go. Those are our facial planes. Okay, so understanding that is going to help you know where to look for shadows when you're working with the model, right? We're going to have a lot of shadows in the eyes. We're going to have different tones on the side and front of the face. We're going to have shadow under here. And that's really going to help your faces look a lot more 3D. Just by adding a shadow pattern, we can make a huge difference between whether what we draw or paint looks totally flat or if it looks three-dimensional, even with a really simple shadow scheme. All right. Okay. I'm going to do this.